Right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jorge Acosta Palmer, and I'm the director of the Statewide Training Initiative with Florida Legal Services. We're excited to have you join us today for the first webinar of the year, Emancipation of Children is Freedom Easy. Before I introduce our speaker, I do want to go through some quick housekeeping announcements. This training is being recorded, so if you're registered, you're going to receive a copy of this recording and a link to the materials from Zoom. That email should go out in about 24 hours. But we will also be posting the recording on YouTube. So if you're subscribed to our channel, you're gonna get notified once it's posted later today. But you should be able to find it later. I'll be adding in the description a copy of a link to the materials, the CLE code, and some additional information for all of you to be able to access. So the training was approved by the Florida Bar for 2 General CLE and 2 Juvenile Certification Law Credits. I'm gonna drop the CLE code into the chat towards the end of the webinar, but it will also be included in the email that goes out from Zoom, and it will also be included in the YouTube description. Closed captions are enabled for anybody who needs them. If you're having any issues with accessibility, feel free to let me know in the chat or via email, and I'll see what I can do to make sure that we can address that. And materials and certificates, as I said, the materials are going to be in the Zoom email and in the YouTube description. If you need a certificate of attendance, please email me after the webinar. What I'll do is I'll let all these emails requesting a certificate kind of pile up so I can start hammering them out as I have the opportunity probably tomorrow. So final piece of housekeeping announcements. Slido and questions and answers. So we're going to be using Slido for some of the interactive slides. So if you have a phone, you're going to be able to pull out your phone and scan the QR code and interact. That's one option. That's the easiest option. But if you're doing this from your desktop, you can also go to slido.com and you're going to enter the code that Janine will prompt. I'm going to drop it into the chat as well to make it as easy as possible. But you will also see that code in the slides, so it's pretty easy to use. And as you enter your answers, we will be able to see them on the screen. So for questions and answers, I'm going to ask everybody to please use the Zoom Q&A feature. We have Robin Rosenberg with us. She's going to try to answer the questions as they come in. If for whatever reason one question is unanswered, we're going to leave questions towards the end. So if you make sure to use the Q&A. It's a lot easier to track questions through the Q&A feature over the chat. So we would really appreciate if you can use that Q&A. What I'll do as well is that I will pull a report and drop the questions and answers into the materials as well, so you can all review them afterwards. And I think this is the final piece of housekeeping announcements. This training is being co-hosted by the Public Interest Law section of the Florida Bar, and it just happens that Janine Rice, our speaker today, she is the chair for the Public Interest Law section of the Florida Bar. So if you're not familiar with PILS, I highly encourage you to take a look at the website at the PILS website. I'm going to drop the link into the chat. We have many subject matter working groups and many committees, one of them being the Children's Rights Committee, which is chaired by Robin Rosenberg. So with that said, I'm going to keep the bio short and the intro short because I want to make sure we get right to the content. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Janine Rice with Florida Children's First and our chair for the Public Interest Law section. So Janine, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jorge. I always appreciate your hosting these and making everything so accessible for everybody. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Emancipation of Children and Is Freedom Easy? As you can see, the person is running uphill towards the target, but the question is, will he ever make it? And that's kind of the theme behind today's presentation. So Jorge already went over the housekeeping matters, but when you get the slideshow, I just want you to know that everywhere you see a link, you can click on it and access the websites. So Florida's Children First is where I work. I provide direct representation to former or current foster youth or people who could have, it's very broadly defined, been in foster care. And so this is relatively a new service that Florida's Children First offers. So I want to make sure everybody knows that we're available as a referral source. We're a civil legal aid organization, and If you ever find a gap in coverage, please reach out to us because we can fill some gaps, or we might be able to, I should say, no guarantee. The public interest law section, as Jorge said, is a section of the Florida Bar, and I'd really like to encourage everyone, whether you're an attorney or not, especially for any law students out there, or for anybody who knows a law students can be members for free, zero cost to them. And we really highly encourage them and want them to become members of our profession while they're still in law school. And then lastly, Jorge didn't mention this, but I want you all to go to the YouTube channel for Florida Legal Services Statewide Training Initiative and like and subscribe, because if you like and subscribe, you too will get alerts on your phone whenever there's a note, or on your YouTube on your big screen TV, whenever there is a new webinar that's been posted. And there's our logos. Jorge covered the housekeeping. It's 2 credits today. And I want to reemphasize here at the bottom, please use the Q&A feature so that we do not miss your questions or your sharing of information. I've been in some chats where I just can't keep up and I'm just the participant. So please use our Q&A function so that we don't miss you. So this presentation is going to be about what are people's expectations and where do those expectations come from? Where the rubber meets the road, which is reality, and then workarounds, because that reality isn't the panacea or isn't maybe a difficult reach for many people. And you're going to see the barriers along the way. And I like creative solutions to barriers. The other thing we're going to do is talk about nuts and bolts. And in your materials, you're not only going to have the law, but you're going to have some forms, including a template. If you're interested in me, that's what I do and have done. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but I've been in and around working with youth from the time I was in law school. As a prosecutor in Maryland, it was kind of like my little niche. And once I did that, I started getting appointed by judges when I was in private practice, all the way to here down in Florida, where I'm really a part of the children's rights culture. And this is the QR code for the slide. Slide into our Slidos. It's kind of like sliding into the DMs, right? For those of you who might be in my age bracket, you don't have to actually go into settings. You can just use your camera on your phone. You don't need to use the QR code setting on your phone in order to access a QR code. I want to tell you that I just learned that in August of this year, or 2025. So I was 57 years old when I found that out. This is what a Slido slide looks like. So if you couldn't see it in the chat, I'm going to say it verbally out loud so that you can hear me. If you want to join, go to Slido, SLIDO.com, and then the number that you enter is 1055752. I'm going to leave that up for a little bit longer so that you QR coders can have at it. Again, that's slido.com, and the number is 1055752, and hopefully this will work. So here's our first question, which is, who are you? You know who I am. I'd like to know who I am speaking to. What roles do you serve personally and or professionally that lead you to your interest and participation here today? So I know that sometimes we have attorneys who are also foster parents, that we have relative caregivers who also are dependency case managers. So you can wear more than one hat today. And you can answer under both capacities. I would just really like to see who all is here. And up in the corner, it's folks are entering in. So I'm going to take a while and wait to see how the count goes. I don't know how many of you who registered are actually here. It's quite a number. So we're gonna hang out here and wait a little bit so that everybody can join.
Well, people are trying to answer. I'm seeing some answers in the chat. So do not answer in the chat. Try answering through the Slido so that way the answers come up. So, as Janine had mentioned, to access the Slido, you can click on the Slido link that I dropped into the chat. You will enter that code and you're going to see, you should see like two tabs, one for Q&A, one for polls. And when you click on the polls, you're going to see these questions come up, and that's where you should have the ability to submit your answer. So if anybody has any issues accessing Slido, try if you want messaging me privately directly, and I'll try to brainstorm with you to make sure that it's working properly. Thank you.
Jorge, do you know how many people are actually physically here? Because I don't want to sit here, I want to make sure everybody has a chance, but I don't want to.
You have about a third of the people who are in the room.
Okay, thank you.
Which is pretty good for this kind of
yeah. So I think about half of you all are still sliding into the Slido. The number keeps going up. I hope you're answering, and you can answer more than once. What this is going to do, if it works successfully, is create a word cloud. So we can see.
It's probably worth showing now.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it. Voila. I think this is the neatest thing in the world. I'm showing you like my IT naivete. I think it's the coolest thing ever. So we have in-house counsel for a CBC. Thank you for being here. I would love to have a chat with you. Please reach out to me because there's a separate concept completely unrelated to what we're talking about here today. That I'm interested in chatting with you. It doesn't matter where you are. I would just like to collaborate. So we have volunteers. We have FFCR. I'm sure Robin can tell me what that acronym is. Regional is in the house. Office of Regional Counsel. I'm an alumni. A pro bono coordinator. We love our pro bono coordinators. A law student. Shout out to the law students and to the legal assistants and paralegals. You are what makes the machine move. And Gallo, there's a guardian ad litem office person here, AALs. This is really great. What great diversity. And I know all of you not only represent our children or work in their best interest, but you care for them as human beings. So thank you very much.
This is great. I think probably time-wise, you want to
move on. Yep. So the next Slido, now that you know how it works, is a question. First question is, who is Emancipation granting freedom to? Who do you think benefits the most from Emancipation, if anyone? We don't want to make any assumptions, so maybe you think nobody benefits from it. And also, are you thinking of the full panoply of Emancipation, or maybe some individual sticks in the bundle? Who do you think benefits the most?
Quick plug for Slido again. If you were on your browser, you should be able to refresh your browser and you should see this poll question come up as another option now that you can answer as well. And we actually see some participants are currently typing. So I dropped the link again. The code is the same. So let me know if you have any issues accessing the Slido.
Okay, let's see what happens here. Because I saw that people pop in while we're looking at it. All right. The legal guardian of the child. Somebody thinks independent children who need to get away from parents or guardians, parents not capable of caring for kids, a child who is independent, potentially the person being emancipated, minors, parents, society. It depends. Oh, that must be a lawyer who wrote that. Depends on the facts of the case. Homeless youth. This is definitely the right presentation to talk about that challenge when we get into the weeds. All right. Those stay active, so I think you can keep putting your information in there. Whoever the child will be living with. And now that we have our brains fired up, let's go on to the next question. Which is, oh, where did that come from? Sorry. Uh-oh. Yikes. Help me. Sorry, guys. Oh, well, we know where that went. Let me see if I can get that out of there. No? What has happened? I apologize. I hit escape.
Let me see your screen, just the top and bottom menus too, but it's really just the slide, so you could go
Okay.
back.
All right. What freedoms are granted by emancipation? Okay, let's jump in there and see. Decision making, marry, ability to enter into contracts, to make your own choices legally for medical and financial, freedom from responsibility for the parent, use, signing legal documents, treated as an adult, live independently, make decisions about their health and anything else. Autonomy. I love that word. Control, renting, banking, medical health, post 18 rights, work, and live life. It depends. Freedom from responsibility for the parent. I'm really I don't know how many people, like, I know that the more people who say the same thing, it gets bigger, but I really just see that one time. I'm surprised. Anyhow, yes, it's all of this and maybe not one of this. We'll see. You'll see. All right, we're going to move on. So, pop culture, this is where we form most of our understandings of the law for the most part, unless we had some personal interaction ourselves. Most, and when I say us, I include lawyers because not every lawyer knows every area and niche of the law. Perhaps you're a fan of The Simpsons and saw the episode called Barting Over. And if you see this image, it might bring back some memories. That's Tony Hawk. And why was Tony Hawk interested or around? Because Bart's dad blew Bart's money, and Homer had to bring Tony Hawk in to make amends. Another one that's interesting is this character named Eleanor Shellstrop. I didn't know the name, and I thought The Good Place was somehow related to The Good Wife, that attorney television show that's on CBS or used to be. Anyhow, I've actually seen 1 or 2 episodes of The Good Place, and it's about somebody who's up in heaven. And this is, I'm going to play this one because I think it really sums up everything that we think of when we think of emancipation, and we're not actually in the process. We don't work with children, we're just John Q. Public. This is where we get our information from.
Emancipation papers? Honey, what does emancipation mean? It means I'll be on my own. All my life, I've been taking care of myself and you guys.
Sorry about the language.
Jobs because you blew half my college fund bailing your boyfriend out of jail.
So irresponsible.
And you blew the other half trying to frame her boyfriend.
It was so stupid. He was already guilty, dumbass.
I've been on my own for
sorry.
a while now anyway. After you sign these papers, it'll be official. I won't owe you anything, you won't owe me anything.
Well, if you want me to sign, oh, that's a joint. Do you have a pen or a lighter?
You're a really interesting person, Eleanor. We should hang out some.
Your parents suck.
Yeah, they did. And I've been using their crappy parenting as an excuse for my selfish behavior all my life.
No, if only I could
No
figure
more.
out how to stop
We
it.
know what's right.
Yeah, you can click on the tab. You can close that one out.
Emancipation papers?
Sorry.
Ride or die.
Emancipation papers?
Where is it?
Honey,
I
what
think-
does emancipation mean?
It
You
means
can click on
I'll
the
be on
X on
my
the
own.
tab.
Sorry,
and then
folks.
close it
I've
out.
been taking care of myself and you guys. I worked 2 after-school jobs because you blew half my college
You can
fund
also
bailing your
pause it.
boyfriend out of jail.
So irresponsible.
And you blew the other half trying to frame her boyfriend.
It was so stupid. He was already guilty, dumbass.
I've been on my own for a while now anyway. And after you sign these papers, it'll be
Darn it.
official. I won't owe you anything, you won't owe me anything.
Well, if you want me to sign, oh, that's a
Janine, you can
joint.
click. You
Do
can
you
click
have a
on the
pen
tab
or
and
a
X
lighter?
out.
You're a
Will the
really
YouTube video
interesting
explain?
person, Eleanor. We should.
I don't know how to stop this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Janine, you
Oh.
can click on the tab on your browser.
Your
You
parents suck.
see the 2
Yeah,
YouTube
they
videos.
did.
It has an
And
X
I've
to the
been
right
using their
of it,
crappy
and you
parenting
can
I
close
as
it
an
don't.
out.
excuse for my selfish behavior all my life.
I don't see it.
No more. We know
Oh.
what's right here. We have to go back.
Sorry, guys. I tried to do too much. Bear with me.
We're not hearing it anymore. You want to just go on?
No, I'm just trying to get back into my presentation.
We do see your screen right now, Janine.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm trying. I'm almost there, getting it over there. I don't know.
if you have the slide up right now, we see the non-lawyer perspective. So
Yes. Here we go. And then I'm going to bring this over here. Are we all good?
we still see the slide where it says the non-lawyer perspective. There we go. You moved the slide. There we go.
Okay. So, healthcare, which I saw there was a lot of reference to in the word cloud. And there's a lot of literature, it's in your materials, from the healthcare professionals about their concerns. They're aware of adolescence, which is, we'll get to it, but basically it's for our 16 and 17-year-olds in Florida. In Kansas, the youngest age is 14. In some other states, they don't even have a minimum age at which you can apply. It's on a case-by-case basis. But here in Florida, it's 16 and 17. And there's all these things that are going on cognitively, biologically, hormonally, everything, all the things. And so the healthcare providers are aware of this, the law is aware of this, and there's certain workarounds on occasion. But generally, minors cannot consent to their own medical care. It's their body, but based on the way our society evolved, children, just like women, were labored under a legal disability. For women, it was the disability of coverture, and for minors, it's this nonage. So we can't, when we're minors, we can't consent to our own medical care. And then there's carve-outs, right? So to me, this is very important that we understand exactly what our medical providers are probably already aware of, because the American Medical Association, as well as the Pediatric Association, provide a lot of training to their members to make sure that they're aware of the conflicts and how to go about resolving them. If you're not aware, a lot of hospitals have ethical officers and things of that nature. But there's carve-outs. And in Florida, we have specific carve-outs. They change from state to state. But the American Pediatrics and the American Medical Association kind of take this approach that it should be family-based decision making. We need to respect adolescent confidentiality when it's allowed, because there's certain things that go on. If you think about the reaction that some parents may have, it's not always going to be a safe or nurturing environment. So that's where these carve-outs come in, and where we want children to get the care, the adolescents in particular, to get the care that they need. And that folks are aware of all these carve-outs and how to cover themselves. Right. Why does this happen? Look. Let me go back one screen. Okay, so as somebody pointed out in the word cloud, parents may want to be free from parenting. Do they want to be free from their child support obligation? Do they want to be free from a child who is ungovernable and doesn't listen to them? Or they want to be free just to live their own life without having to be responsible for a child who to them is capable. Some children are parentified and already run the household. Some children out there working hard, bringing in an additional income stream into the household. During the Depression, there were reasons why people had 7 children staggered apart, my mom being one of them. And it was because each child could go out and earn money and bring in, it was like having an extra parent in the household, or 3. And then from the child's perspective, the child wants to have some autonomy and some agency and some choice. What are the hot topics these days? How do I identify? What books do I want to read? What activities do I want to go to? You know, there's just the gamut of things where, you know, it's the child's person, their body, their brain. If you think about playing football, things of that nature. And they want to be free, but up until the point where you are 16, unless it's a statutory carve out, you definitely are under the control of your parents. And I will say that up until just a few days or weeks ago, we in the 17th Circuit, I've always heard it pronounced non-age, because that's how you read it on the paper, but you know those words that don't sound like they're spelled? Well, this is one of them. It's non-age. And I gave a little link there. So like me, you can learn the correct pronunciation. So here's our legal framework in Florida. The word minor means any person who has not attained the age of 18 years. And Chapter 743 contains how, by operation of law, in other words, without further action, that non-age disappears. And I do go in and out because my old habit was saying non-age. But the by operation of law, without further order of court, you can have the disability of non-age disappear, kind of poof, it goes away. But in certain circumstances, the only way to get around it, if you don't have access to the creative resources, you're not eligible, you don't qualify or what have you, is to find one of your parents, one of your legal guardians, or if there is none, neither a parent, a natural guardian, a legal guardian, then you have to find a guardian ad litem to bring it on your behalf because you're suffering under this disability of non-age. And except for one exception, you cannot go into court and file on your own. So here's where you see it in bold is the things that I want to draw and let everybody know, because it's age 16 and 17. And who can file in the circuit court? Either the natural guardian or the legal guardian. And based on the express language of the statute for our textualists, who cannot is a guardian ad litem if there is a natural guardian or a legal guardian. And I'm saying this because you can see where we need to maybe clean this up a little depending on how you view it. The child, if there is a natural guardian or a legal guardian, and you notice it just says by a guardian ad litem, it doesn't say a next friend. Well, you'll see what this inconsistency is in the next slide, but there are internal inconsistencies in this statute. And then it tells you, you know, the things that you need to include in your petition. And I would say paragraphs D and F are the ones that we really need to pay the most attention to with our clients and our young people, because this is where you're going to find, first, you have the procedural burden of who can bring the case. But the second is, do you have the facts to support it? And so a statement that talks about these characteristics and capacities, and then why do they want to know these things? Because this is what goes into the decision-making process. Are they financially independent? Are they disciplined and responsible? What is their level of education? And implicitly, you're going to find judges who say incapacity for GED. At the age of 16, you are not required to go to school. At the age of 16, it's no longer compulsory education in the state of Florida. So you can go and work full-time subject to the labor laws. So, but the judges, I think, are always looking out for everybody's best interest, which of course is different from each child and each family's situation. What are your financial skills, or what we call these days financial literacy? Does your income coming in pay for your necessities? And what is your source of income? Is it going to be consistent? Is it just for the purposes of getting through this proceeding? Or are you one of those special individuals who has such a unique talent that it doesn't matter what your age is, starting at 8 months, if you were Drew Barrymore, you started creating income? And then the statement of the reasons why, given these facts about the child, how or why should the court remove the disability of nonage? So how is this child able to handle adult responsibilities on their own? What benefit is there to the child that outweighs the risks? And you know, the person to my left can view a benefit and a risk one way, and the person to my right can view a benefit and a risk a different way. So ultimately, it's the person who's assigned to hear the case who's going to be doing that risk-benefit analysis. What protective capacities does the child have? Are they street smart? Or are they book smart? Or are they a blend of both? And which one of those, or what capacities does each one of those bring to the table? Why? Because we want to make sure that when we remove this disability of nonage, that the child's not going to be subjected to predation or exploitation by others. Now, I will say, and to be very clear, when it comes to criminal conduct, when you remove the disability of nonage, you are not giving, it's not fair game. It's not a free-for-all. You're still a minor in the eyes of the criminal courtroom when you're the victim. But when it comes to shady contractors, people trying to scam you, people, it happens to our elderly, it happens to our more vulnerable adults, it can happen to children with money and income, no matter how little that might be, depending on their protective capacities. And a protective capacity could be having a supportive adult, a football coach, or what have you. So then we get to the service of process, and if the petition is filed by the natural or legal guardian, the court must appoint an attorney ad litem. That would be a pro bono, because there's no registry or wheel, as far as I know, for emancipation cases. But who's not mentioned there? If the petition is filed by a guardian ad litem. So if the petition is filed by the guardian ad litem, and here they introduce the next friend. So if you recall, in paragraph 1 or subsection 1, they don't mention the next friend, but here they do. So, a next friend can file a petition. Surprise. Service of process must be perfected on the natural parents. And I just note that how different classes of persons in this statute are treated differently. If you're a natural guardian, if you're a legal guardian, if you're a guardian ad litem, do you get the attorney ad litem? Do you not get the attorney ad litem? Then we get to both parents. So you'll have a situation where there are two parents, if there are, and they're not in agreement in filing jointly in this petition, then you better make sure that you track down and find the non-petitioning parent, unless you do a diligent search and the parent only, it seems, by the way textualism works, can use the constructive service of process here. Of course, you can always file, I shouldn't say always, but you might be able to file a motion for alternative service, but just be aware of the way they wrote the language in this statute. And then this is just the balance of it, but there wasn't anything tricky here other than it seems like subsection 7 is a repetition of subsection 6. All right, so here are our statutory exceptions. How we remove the disability of nonage by operation of law. Marriage. So a lot of you were putting in this is the little piece of to be determined in your word cloud that you thought you needed to get emancipation in order to marry. Well, you do, but it happens by operation of law. You do not have to file a document. You do not have to get a court order. The marriage of the minor, regardless of their gender, because at one time it was gender specific, even if it's not one of these bubbles that comes and goes. So you're married and you get the disability of nonage lifted. Now you're getting divorced, the marriage is annulled, or your beloved has died. Does the disability of nonage come down upon you like a dark cloud after that? No, it remains removed. This is different than another one that we'll get to in a minute. But the marriage of a minor doesn't come and go with the status of the marriage. Once you're married, it stays. And then the other one is by operation of law. So getting emancipated does not give you because it's actually in the language, alcoholic beverages and the voting. So there may be others, but those are real specific. Everybody thinks about it. So just because you get emancipated by the court doesn't mean you get to be a 16 or 17-year-old who votes or who can start shopping at the liquor store. So now we have our foster care youth, and there are 4 limited removals of the disability of nonage in the statute, and they are for very specific purposes, and they can be triggered at very specific ages. So here's a little practice tip. Submit your motions and your proposed orders for the motor vehicle insurance, as long as they've completed their driver's ed, and for the depository financial services at the age of 16. Then you don't have to, oh, I got a job, but now I need a bank account, or, oh, I got a car, and you have to track everybody down. Does your judge allow unopposed without a hearing? Do you have to set it for a hearing? I just think if you want to be a proactive advocate, you tickle your calendar. My child turned 16. My child turned 6, and when I say my child, my client turned 16, and they've already done their driver's ed, which you can do before you turn 16. And then the other 2 are triggered at the age of 17, and that's removing the disability of nonage for residential leases and like applications, consenting to background checks, everything that goes into that lease application, as well as the signing of the contract itself. Same for the utility services. And here are some more that apply to our youth, whether they're in foster care or not. And when I say, let me go back a second. Sorry. When I say foster care, for the ones that have to do with age 16, because and now I'm doing this off of memory and it's been three long days, but I want to say you definitely need to look at the language, because one says adjudicated dependent and uses the term foster care, and the other two use the term out of home placement. So you can be in an out of home placement and not be in foster care, because foster care implies a foster care license. But there are other placements outside of your parents' home where you can live and you can get. So, and I'm thinking it's, because I'm trying to be logical, it would be the ability to have a bank account and the motor vehicle insurance. Check me on that, but I'm pretty sure. So going now to the slide that has to do with removing the disability of nonage by operation of law for all youth. So you do not need to get a court order when you turn 16 in order to borrow money for higher ed. And that's the term they use, higher education, because I was looking, is it for college? Is it, they say higher education. Because I started to write this with college, student loans. It is student loans, but you can borrow money for higher education. So think of your vocational, your trade schools, getting your LPN, things of that nature. And that's a whole other topic for our young people and student loans. At age 17, you don't need to get your parents' permission to donate blood for free. If you do it for compensation, that's a different thing. But if you're doing it for free, like at the blood drives, at the big red bus, or the people who give out the movie tickets, in the old days, the Red Cross would come into our school gym at the high school. I passed out. I never voluntarily donated blood again. But yes, at age 17 in Florida, you can donate blood without parental consent, as long as you're not selling it to a plasma center, what have you. Emergency medical care, there is definitely a process for the doctors in terms of their efforts to reach the parental figure. And by parental figure, I mean natural guardian or legal guardian. And not just someone who's a physical custodian who doesn't have legal authority. And then medical care of an unwed pregnant minor, or medical care of an unwed minor's child. So we still have just a dash of paternalism and the patriarchy here. Because it's well, all right. Because when she's married, her disability of nonage disappears. But you could look at it cynically as well. So turning now to some additional ones that have to do with giving you broader access to services, as opposed to, it's not necessarily removing the disability of nonage. I guess you could say it is, but it's that you have the access, but it's limited in the sense that there's only so many times you can go get your outpatient crisis intervention services and treatment at the age of 13 before your parents or your legal guardians are brought into it. Another one is voluntary admissions for mental health care. And again, there's definitely a process of what has to happen. You can't just check into a hospital to escape your parents and think that they're not going to be informed that you're there. But you can be the first one to show up at the hospital, and then they'll let you in, and then what happens? And so I commend those two statutes to they're going to be in your materials. And then this is the one that remember I was talking earlier about the marriage doesn't, when you get married as a minor, the disability of nonage goes away, and it doesn't come back when your marriage ends, for whatever reason the marriage ends. Well, we have another one, and there's case law on this. The minor is adjudicated guilty as an adult. So direct file. Child's been direct filed and adjudicated guilty. They're then placed under the supervision of the Department of Corrections, so probation or community control, or they're in the physical custody of the Department of Corrections, prison. Honestly, I'm so far removed from criminal these days that I don't know if they still have the youthful offender boot camp approach, but either way, so you may not be in prison per se, but you're in the custody of the Department of Corrections. So while you're in those situations, your disability of nonage has disappeared for the purposes of healthcare. Makes it easier for them. So you can make decisions for yourself. You have the capacity, you have the ability, no one even questions that. It's just when you're in the department's custody, DOC's custody and supervision, suddenly you have the capacity more so than your peers. Sorry if I was a little snarky. All right. This is my favorite statute. I mean, this is like, I want to share the good news with you. For those of you who may or have had any interaction with our homeless youth, this statute is so empowering. It does a couple of things. The first one, that I think about for the purposes of this presentation is that it allows the certified unaccompanied homeless youth to petition for the removal of nonage on their own and without a natural or legal guardian or a guardian ad litem or a next friend. So Tom Jones has gone to his guidance counselor, and his guidance counselor or whoever the designated person is in the school has signed the certificate saying that he is an unaccompanied homeless youth. Easiest situation. They're in school and they have a relationship where someone can make that certification. The second one is they're not in school. They're literally homeless. They're not going to school, even though federal law gives all sorts of supports for them to. Then there's other steps in the process. And if you have a homeless youth not in school, I commend you to look at this statute because it gives you the list of the different ways you can go about getting that certified. So not having to have someone stand in your shoes for you makes it so much easier. The statute also says it gives, and I have a form template for you to use that's in Word, where I listed everything, like my client is this. As a result, he doesn't have to pay the filing fee. This statute says that these cases are to be heard, are to be prioritized, prioritized by the court. So it should go to the top of the list with the other things that are being prioritized by the court. And so that's great, right? They've lessened the burden and the barrier compared to our other 16 or 17-year-olds who need to find somebody who's willing to go to court with them under those super limited circumstances when either their natural or legal guardian won't because they're stubborn, even though they know it would be in their best interest, or because they're just opposed to it. for their reasons, with no judgment on what those reasons are. So that's why I call it the most important tool in the toolkit. The other thing is that a youth with that certified unaccompanied homeless youth certificate, it allows the youth to obtain their birth certificate, their social security card, and get their Florida ID or driver's license even replaced. Like, let's say they already got it, but now they're homeless and they lost it, or let's say the adoption broke down and the adoptive parent refused to give them any of their papers, and they're literally without anything. This is the process that you start with. You get the school, if you've got one. I always think that's the quickest and easiest. You get the certificate and then you just start going. First, you go to the Department of Health, then you go to the Social Security Administration, and then you go to the DHSMV. And that's really the order in which, if you look at their forms and their statutes and what they require, that's actually the sequence. So, creative solutions. Couch surfing. If this term basically refers to you're landing in somebody's home and they don't owe you an obligation. The question is, and you're going to say, Janine, where did you come up with this strange language, non-volunteer stranger? It literally comes from that case, THRS versus Holland. And it says that any non-volunteer stranger has a common law's cause of action for the cost of necessities against the parent because of the parent's neglect, or what we might call abandonment, of his or her legal parental duties to support the minor child. And now for those of you who work in the child dependency system, you're like, oh, well, if the parents abandon the child, let's just go get a shelter order and bring them into care. Well, not every child, especially your 16 and 17-year-olds, and maybe your late 17-year-olds, they have their reasons. Whether you agree with them or not, they have their reasons. And you may counsel them. You would explain to them what all the benefits are of going into care, and it's only going to be for a minute. But we talk about agency and autonomy, and they may have had some experiences, or they may know family members who have some experiences. And because of what they know that's personal to them and their lived experiences, that's not a solution for them, despite all the benefits it comes with. So, maybe it's a parent on a football team. Maybe it's an older cousin. But I think this is interesting. What is a non-volunteer stranger? But in any event, I do know people who have served in this capacity who have gone, and the Child Support Enforcement Administration has not turned them away. So I think it might be a reach. But I also know situations where the government hasn't said no. So the other thing is, everybody thinks, oh, you need the disabilities of nonage removed so you can open a bank account, because where are you going to put your money when you have a job? Well, I'm sorry, the landscapers for my association are right outside my door. So there's digital banking for the unbanked, and I've got 2 links here, not only for information, but these also happen to be the entities that create these digital banking or pay cards, payroll debit cards. So there are millions and millions. I was shocked by the number of unbanked employees. And that was in 2012, I think, when that data was collected. So of course it's more now, but you can get a pay card, and it's not tied to a bank account. And Florida has a particular statute that says what the employer has to do in order to use these payroll debit cards. So it's to be a permissible method of wage payment. So that's Florida Statute 532.01, and there's 2 other statutes that follow it that also talk about alternative payment methods. Because if you go to the check cashing store, you're giving away, 3% or more of your paycheck. and walking around with a lot of cash is never a good idea. So this payroll debit card works. And I recently learned that this is what they'll do for child support. I mean, this has become such a part of our, I guess, our fintech life, that child support now can come if you, let's say you forget to update your direct deposit information with the whoever's collecting your child support, whether it's the clerk's office or whomever. They put it on a debit card. They mail you the card. You have no idea why the debit card is coming to you. You might throw it out and then you have to go and get another one. But this is what, I sound like such an old lady. This is what is happening these days. Work. So work, you can't, what's the point of having a bank account if you can't work? Or having a pay card. Also think of those gift cards where you can keep adding money back onto them. It's the same concept. So Florida's child labor law protects the minors from taking on either work that is dangerous, work that interferes with their education, or just overworks them, right? So we had federal labor laws back with the New Deal, I believe, in the 40s. Some people weren't crazy about them. We have them in Florida as well as the federal ones. And I've given in your materials, as well as seeing here on the screen, that's the child labor rule for the exemptions, for the waiver. So you can literally get a written application to have you be exempted. And then there's a separate rule that for the minors that are that are part of a touring company or what have you. All right. Child labor laws. So this is, I'm not going to go through it line by line with you, but I just want you to know that there is a waiver application and where to find it, that school districts can create their own. If they don't have their own, then you look here and you structure your request, your written request, so that it meets the criteria. And to get that, the better the more likely that waiver will be approved is the more specificity. So I need to be exempt from here to here for this reason. I need to be exempt from here to here for that reason. And I have to, I close up. I used to do the closing shift at Wendy's, and we definitely work past 11. So just know that this is here, that this is how you can help your clients who maybe aren't eligible for, can't get, for whatever the barrier is, the court ordered removal of the disability of nonage. And you don't always have to ask for the whole enchilada. You can, when you go in and you file the removal of disability of nonage, just ask for the things that your client needs, and it might improve your likelihood of having it granted. Okay. And this just tells you the process of how to go about it. I think this is the really rare area, but I just, especially for our folks in the rural areas where you're using backhoes, where you're cutting down big trees. I know you're going to think, what is a 14 or a 16-year-old doing up in a tree? But there's actually a case. There's always a case. And this child was 14 years old. He was up in a tree. It was not part of his career education with the school district, or any of these other type like Job Corps, what have you. And he was up in this tree and he was putting in the notches for felling the tree. And when I say he was up there, it was actually in Middleburg in Clay County. And the 14-year-old, he had the one harness on, but apparently you were supposed to have a second harness because of course you always want to have a backup. Anyway, the tree came down, broke his harness, and he fell to the ground and lost his life. So that would be a hazardous occupation. But when you're in a rural area, when the labor pool is sparse, and even here, like I'm in South Florida, there's not enough money in the world to put me up on the top of crane rigging or on up at the top, you know, where they top off the high rises with the plant. I'm fairly afraid of heights, so I really think it would take more than what they already pay these people, which is a lot of money, I know. But if the risk may be worth the reward, and so there are people who are willing to make that, and families who are willing to do that. So I just wanted to talk about the fact that there are these very hazardous occupations. They're listed in the statute. And here's how you go about doing it. And this is all spelled out for you because you're going to have these materials and someday you might want to refer back to it. But there's not just Florida's child labor law. There's also the federal child labor requirements, the Fair Labor Standards Act, and there are exemptions there. And when I took a quick cursory look at them, they seemed to be very, very similar to our exemptions. And so I didn't spend a whole lot of time there. Also, I don't practice employment law, and I'm not going to offer any opinions in that area, but you can read and apply the law to your facts. All right, so getting close to wrapping it up, life does not come with a manual. And even, you know, when we're operating these cars that travel at high rates of speed, that are their tonnage is a lot, other than to figure out how to change the headlight bulb or some other thing, how many people actually read the manual, right? So even if we had a manual for life, I'm not sure everybody would read it, but these are some things that I would like, whether you are a guardian ad litem, a mentor, in whatever capacity you serve, other than being an attorney, and of course attorneys, but I'm not assuming you're an attorney. So I just want everybody to be aware that when you're dealing with your youth, I bring it here to you in the context of emancipation, because then when you go in and you're asking for the relief in court, you know, you can make sure that your youth presents as somebody who actually knows how to use the manual for life. And we're not talking about just doing laundry or, you know, how to apply coupons digitally or things of that nature. But those are, you know, important parts of living. You don't want to walk around in dirty clothes, but what's more important is some of these financial consequences. And I think we don't talk about it enough. What is a credit report? Have you seen your credit report? How do I not screw up my credit in the first place? And do I understand what the consequences are from having bad credit? Interest rates are higher. Landlords require higher security deposits. Just everybody jacks up the price a little bit. It's what I call the tax, the bad credit tax. You're not paying it to the government, but you're paying it to the people who are providing you with services, financial services. Does anybody even balance their checkbook anymore? I say that I still have blank checks, so I must have money in my checking account. This is a true story, not for me personally, but for a young person. I can pay $25 a month on my minimum credit card. Why can't I just do that? How, and you know, how does compounding interest work? Why am I being charged all these fees? Are they junk fees? I'm just breathing. Why am I getting these fees? And what can I do once a year? PNC Bank has amnesty. You can go in and ask for forgiveness. I never knew that until the day I asked. Do you have to have a certain deposit balance, or is just the fact that I'm getting direct deposit on a monthly basis from a source sufficient? I don't have a bank. I use Creative Finance. I go to the check cashing store and I pay 3% to the check cashing store. And by the way, it's not it. Well, it used to be the check cashing store would charge based on how much the check that you were cashing. It was like a sliding scale. And then a couple of things, just because when I read them, it reminded me of when the right of coverture as to credit cards, the disability of coverture as to credit cards lifted in the late 70s, about the time that I was born. And what I didn't know was this. I came across these two cases and I just was really surprised. Fathers were responsible for their minor daughter's liability. The accident happened before the marriage, but they brought the case after the marriage, and he was responsible because he signed her driver's license application. And also back then, it wasn't until 1973 when or 73, 74, when the disability of nonage switched from 21 to 18. So, you think it's a struggle now with a 16 or 17-year-old, 21. And then here we are 22 years later in 1990, and a 15-year-old gets married, and 2 months before she got married, her father had signed her driver's license. But, we were talking about whether the disability of nonage comes and goes. Also, they had changed the driver's license statutes. But it still boggles me because I grew up after the disability of coverture was lifted for credit cards. I lived in a world where, and it still boggles my mind when I see this stuff. The other thing is, this is a not so fun fact in my opinion, but to each his own. The United States of America is the only nation that still has not ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. In 1995, President Clinton signed it, but he never presented it for ratification. And 30 years later, it still hasn't been ratified. And we are not the only, first world country. We are the only nation that has not ratified. So if you ever come across that question at trivia night at the local pub, you'll be prepared for the answer. And then this, I just wanted to run by you, give you a little flavor of what happens in other states. Shocked me because both of the states that I've practiced in law did not have this. And this is the doctrine of constructive emancipation. I'm not going to read it to you, but just let's say you can divorce your kid. It's sort of like a parental alienation, and it's a shield, I guess, and a sword, because if your kid doesn't have a good reason to emotionally disown you, then you don't have to keep paying child support, even though, it's not the child really that you're hurting, it's the other parent. And forgive me if I use gender, I wasn't trying to. So, but the obligor can invoke this doctrine of constructive emancipation to get out from under child support. It's a very high barrier. There's a lot you have to prove, but the fact that it even exists, I found fascinating. And here is where the rest of the toolkit is, right? These are your rules of procedure. RGPJA is my shorthand for the rules of general practice and judicial administration. It's expressly set out in this particular Florida Family Law Rule of Procedure that emancipation of minors fall within the family law rules. And you'll see on the pre-printed forms, there's a box for you to check off explicitly. I think the letter might be M when you're doing your cover sheet, etc. So there's your family law forms. They're going to be in your materials. And then with regards to our foster youth, That's the juvenile rule of procedure that talks about removing the disability of nonage at the judicial review that's held on before they're 17 and a quarter years old. So 17 plus 3 months after the birthday, that judicial review needs to be held, and there should be a checklist with the disability of non-age orders have been presented and signed. I think we're about ready to open it up for questions. I say use the next Slido, but we're not really sure how the next Slido is going to work, so that we don't send you down a trap door. Please take advantage of not the chat, because we're going to lose you in the chat. It's not just a matter of, wanting to be control freaks. It's really difficult to see everybody's responses. So in the Q&A, if you would, the Zoom Q&A, what did you learn today that you did not already know? What do you want to share with the other participants? You don't have to answer all 3 of these. You can pick one, or you can answer all 3 or just 2, what have you. But what did you learn today that you did not already know? You can pick your favorite thing. What do you want to share with the other participants? So something you're walking around, including me, probably, because none of these cases get reported. There's nobody objecting. They don't go up on appeal. But what do you want to share with the other participants that they should know? And then it could be something that's helpful. Doesn't have to be legal per se. It could just be like, oh, I did this. It was a great creative workaround, whatever it is. Or I have this burden, this barrier that I can't figure out how to work around. Just anything you want to share. And then what other information, this is for future planning purposes. It doesn't have to be directly related, but it could be something that it triggered in your mind. Oh, I would like to know more about that. What other information would you find valuable in your practice? I don't know that we can present on it, but I would love to know. Maybe sometimes we can do direct interactions, and other times you'd be amazed what people find interesting, and we can do a webinar on. So
Janine, while people post in the Q&A, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go ahead and read 2 questions that were posted earlier that Robin answered for the benefit of the audience. The
Sure.
first question was really early on, and the question was, why is it referred as a disability of non-age? And Robin answered, the term reflects the fact that the person's age precludes the exercise of specific rights. It's kind of weird to call it a disability, but that's the term that is used. The other question that was asked, it was, can a minor be married then if when emancipated? And Robin answered, if a minor marries, they are automatically emancipated, for the law permits marriage at age 17 with the written consent of a parent or guardian. And the statute was cited as well. And then there's another question. I keep scrolling down. And can an emancipated minor vote? And the answer is no. The next question is, what if the child does modeling or acting? Does the child labor waiver apply when work hours are not set? And Robin answered, we don't have the expertise to answer this question. Chapter 450 has several provisions directed to children employed by the entertainment industry. So before I go on to the new questions and the new comments, Janine, anything else to add or comment in regards to those questions?
Yes, on the last one, I can probably give them a statutory site right now, because we could do a whole webinar probably just on this. It's addressed in probate court. And it is removal of disabilities of minors, artistic or creative services. So I think that's what the question was asking. I'm not really sure. Professional sports contracts, a procedure for judicial approval, procedural for court approval. And those can be found in 743.08, 743.09, and 743.095 of the Florida statutes. And those are going to be in the materials. There's a folder called statutes, and you'll be able to find the Florida statutes in there. Does that help?
And Janine, before I go to the questions, you had mentioned that you're going to share other materials with me. I will drop these materials into the folder that I have the link for. I'll start dropping some links into the chat as well, including the CLE information. Actually, since I copied it already, I'm gonna paste it right now and read it out loud. The CLE code is
Oh,
2518004N. And I also included my email again in case you need the certificate of attendance afterwards. As I said, email me the request and I will try to get to all of those requests at the same time tomorrow, probably. If for whatever reason I miss the email, feel free to continue to email me because sometimes I accidentally miss those emails. So I'm going to start reading the questions out loud, Janine. The first one is
okay. Oh, Jorge, I just want you to look. The Slido worked. So
okay.
FYI.
Okay, so I'll pull up the Slido afterwards to make sure
Yeah.
that that we are addressing those questions as well. So, are there any cases on next friend filing of emancipation?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it's the way it's stated here is, are there any cases on next friend filing of emancipation?
Not for emancipation, but there are a lot of cases about next friend filing. I can, it might take me a little bit longer to get the folder out, but I do have them readily accessible, so I can just add them to this folder.
Okay, so the next question is, no, I accidentally turned it off here. So, and this is more of a comment on the request of what did you learn something new today? It's I didn't know that there are any exceptions to the child labor laws. Hopefully that was a comment and not a question. So I took it as a comment. Um, Here's another one. I learned that children have a lot of resources that I never knew about. I would like a list of available resources to give to my clients. I think the older kids get lost in the system and feel they do not have any control. So like a list of the request is like a list of resources for these kids. Then question that came up in a case. Can a minor through their AAL, I don't know if they meant GAL, change their
Attorney
first
ad
name?
litem. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
attorney ad litem. So I'm
Mhm.
terrible with my acronyms.
It's
So
okay.
through their attorney ad litem, can they change their first name?
Oh, so you can do a petition for change of name. Um, if you're still a minor, you would have to, exact same process as here. Usually if your parent supports it, they'll file the petition for you. If the parent doesn't support it, they're going to be in opposition. You may have to get creative. It's been a while. Probably the last time I did one was right before I left private practice. So like the fall of 2022. So I can't tell you off the top of my head whether it has in the statute allowance for next friend or a guardian ad litem, but you can always file a motion. I mean, the judge can say no. But and it also there's a whole statute. You have to be able to address all the other issues as well as to why you're doing it. You're not defrauding anybody, blah, blah, blah. So
All right. I see there's a few more comments. I'm gonna reread the code. Sometimes when you copy the code, by the way, it happens all the time. People accidentally copy a space. I'll double check that it's working. So make sure you type it in. Sometimes copy and pasting doesn't work, but it should be working. Otherwise, I'll double check that I have the right code. So
it does look like there's a space in there when I'm looking at the screen.
yeah, maybe I know it happens all the time. I copy and paste all the time and I get the error message. So if it works for you without the maybe typing it in, let me know. Somebody posted it on the chat. So here's another comment on what we learned, something new we learned. I learned that children need consent to make medical decisions unless it's an emergency or certain exceptions apply. We also have, I did not know about constructive emancipation in terms of child support.
That's New
And
York, not Florida.
And then there's a thank you for this presentation. I've done about 25 removals of disability of non-age. What I've learned is look at all options. There are many reasons to remain a child. That's from
Yes.
Walter, one of our fellow post members and EC members.
You don't want to be a child again until you're an adult.
Okay. And I see another comment question about the code. I will drop it again in the chat and I'll read it out loud. Let me pull up my notes here. I also want to pull up this. There's a few questions in the Slidos that I want to make sure that we get to. So I'm copying it the way I'm copying it here in the chat. I did not copy any spaces. So the code is 2518004N.
Oh, I have
And
it also. Whoops. Let's see.
yeah, it might be at the end, the final slide as well.
The big
Okay, so
reveal.
do I have it? 2518004N. All right, so it seems like we do have the correct one. I also have the link for the materials. Honestly, it's likely going to be a lot easier for you to access those materials through the email. So as I said, all this information is going to go out to everybody via email. And I don't think there are any pending questions in the Q&A, so let me take a look at the Slido to see if there's any other questions or comments. There's some additional comments here about what was learned. One of them is, I learned the Florida statutes and rules relating to emancipation standards, as well as the right of parents to divorce a child in New York. Can a minor here's a question. Can a minor sign an engagement agreement with a lawyer for representation in an emancipation petition?
So the question is whether it's void or voidable, right? So,
Can I jump in, Janine?
yes, because you're the, you know this, yeah.
Children can engage attorneys. Attorneys, a contract, the disability of nonage, as it applies to contracts, makes the contract, as Janine said, voidable. It's not void at the outset. It is possibly voidable, but the case law says that if a contract is for necessities, that goes against the voidability, and especially for most of us that are on the participating, we're not getting paid. So it's not going to be a contract that would be detrimental to the child. So yes, children can sign contracts with attorneys to perform legal services.
Yes.
Right. So another comment, intrigued that we are the only country pertaining to the UN. There's I guess not, I think this is a question. What does the judge look for to emancipate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's another comment here. I think that's a question, Janine.
Oh, for
Does the
sure.
judge look for to be emancipated?
I agree 100%. Um, with the financial support standard should be relaxed. The whole point of getting the emancipation is to make them a little more employable than they would otherwise be. And I would like to know, for those of you who have successfully obtained in whether it was contested or not, since we have no case law, I would like to personally hear back from people. It doesn't have to be through this mode of communication necessarily, but just like whatever your experience has been, any practice tips that we could share. If you don't mind, I'll be sure to, if you want me to give attribution, I will. If you don't, I won't, but I'd like to include them in the folder. Just let me know if there's anything that you think would also be helpful.
I think
Are
there's
these
a few more questions, Janine, but I know
Yeah,
we're right at time.
we
What
are.
I'm going to ask people is like, if there are any questions that we're missing, feel free to email us. I will include our contact information in the email that goes out, just in case that we want to that we can follow up with those answers. I also wanted to do a quick plug for the next webinar for this particular series, which is happening Wednesday, February 18th. I know we probably don't have a lot of time and some people need to jump off, but it's going to be here. I dropped it in the chat, but it's also going to be in the email that I sent out. And we do have another webinar that, even though it's not technically part of this series, I would say it's of high interest to the people that are attending this webinar. It's called Advocacy in Action, Strategic Legal Tools for Human Trafficking Cases Involving Children. And that one is happening January 29th, next Thursday. So, and if you didn't know, January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So the webinar could not be more timely. So even though it's not part of the series, feel free to register for that webinar. And if you're unable to attend, we will email you the recording as well. So with that said, I know we're 1 minute past our time. I wanted to thank Janine Rice and Robin for joining us today and for getting us started this year with this amazing webinar. I see a few people posted in the chat. Thank you for another great presentation. So with that said, we're gonna wrap it up and we'll see you all around. So have a
Jorge,
great
can
rest of
I
your
just,
day, Annie. Yeah.
on this last slide, I didn't really get to address, but I just want to say these are links that you can click on. And you can sign up to be a pro bono volunteer. You can join the Florida Dependency Law Center, and you can join PILS. I put the click for joining PILS, and I also put the link for joining PILS that you can click on, as well as the link for joining our work groups. So it shouldn't be too difficult. All you have to do is point and click. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Thank you, Janine. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.